Hello, everyone. I'm Mr. Phil. I'm one of the readers with Hooked on Books for Kids, and the book that we're reviewing today and introducing to you today is called The War That Saved My Life. The author is Kimberly Brubaker Bradley, and this book was a Newbery Award winner. This book and this story is set in the times of World War II. World War II in Europe started in September of 1939. This young girl, with her mother, her brother, live in England, specifically London, and as the war went on by 1940, the Germans were bombing cities in England, especially London. And a lot of children like your age right now, were sent to live out in the country away from the city because it was at times just too dangerous to live in London because of the constant bombing. So this is a story about Ada, a young girl, and her younger brother Jamie, who's 6 years old, and her mother. And her mother is referred to in this book as Ma'am, M-A-M, so you'll see that a lot. And they are sent out into the country, and they are going to be living with a lady called Miss Smith. And what I'm going to do is read to you a little bit. This is a book, by the way, without illustrations. And what I'm going to do is to start this, is to read to you about meeting Miss Smith. "What am I supposed to do with you?" she asked. It was such an odd question. "Nothing," I said. "Ada stays inside," Jamie offered. "I take care of him," I said. "You won't have to," Miss Smith frowned. "How old are you?" This question made me squirm. "Jamie's 6, I said. "Ma'am said he's got to go to school." "He's awfully small for 6, Miss Smith said. Ma'am said, "And surely you're older than he is," she continued. "Don't you go to school?" Jamie said, "Not with that ugly foot." Miss Smith snorted. "That foot's a long way from her brain." She tapped her knife against the edge of her plate. "Birthdays. When? Names. Real names. Not this Smith nonsense." Ada and Jamie," I said. "Smith. That's all I know." She glared at me. I glared back. After a few moments, her gaze softened. "You really don't know." I looked at the eggs on my plate. I asked once. I said, "Ma'am said it didn't matter." One of the things that I did want to mention to you is, again, about this girl who is named Ada, that she does have something wrong with her foot. Her foot is twisted. And a lot of times, people who had defects or disabilities were often hidden from the general public. And they didn't always, as children, go to school like children do now. And you can see the big difference there of how people with disabilities are treated as compared to now. So let me start with chapter 1. And you'll get a picture here right in the beginning about Ada and with how her mother feels about Ada's disability, her twisted foot. "Ada, get back from that window," Ma'am's voice shouting. Ma'am's arm grabbing mine, yanking me so I toppled off my chair and fell hard to the floor. I was only saying hello to Stephen White. I knew better than to talk back, but sometimes my mouth was faster than my brain. I'd become a fighter that summer. Ma'am smacked me hard. My head snapped back against the chair leg, and for a moment I saw stars. "Don't you be talking to nobody," Ma'am said. I let you look out that window out of the kindness of my heart, but I'll board it over if you go sticking your nose out, much less talking to anyone." "Jamie's out there," I mumbled. "And why shouldn't he be?" Ma'am said. "He ain't a cripple, not like you." I clamped my lips over what I might have said next and shook my head to clear it. Then I saw the smear of blood on the floor. Oh, mercy, I hadn't cleaned it all up from this afternoon. If Ma'am saw it, she'd put two and two together fast. Then I'd be in the soup for sure. I slid over until my bottom covered the bloodstain and I curled my bad foot underneath me. You better be making my tea, Ma'am said. She sat on the edge of the bed and peeled off her stockings, wiggled her two good feet near my face. I'm off to work in a bit. Yes, ma'am. I pushed my window chair sideways to hide the blood. I crawled across the floor, keeping my scabbed over bad foot out of Ma'am's line of sight. I pulled myself onto our second chair, lit the gas ring, and put the kettle on. Cut me some bread and dripping, Ma'am said. Get some for your brother, too, she laughed. And if there's any left, you can throw it out the window. See if Stephen White would like your dinner. How'd you like that? I didn't say anything. I cut two thick slices off the bread and shoved the rest behind the sink. Jamie wouldn't come home until after Ma'am left anyhow, and he'd always share whatever food there was with me. When the tea was ready, Ma'am came to get her mug. I see that look in your eyes, my girl, she said. Don't start thinking you can cross me. You're lucky I put up with you as it is. You've no idea how much worse things can be. I had poured myself a mug of tea, too. I took a deep swallow and felt the hot liquid scald a trail clear down to my gut. Ma'am wasn't kidding, but then neither was I. There are all kinds of wars. The story I'm telling starts out 4 years ago at the beginning of the summer of 1939. England stood on the edge of another great war then, the war we're in the middle of now. Most people were afraid. I was 10 years old, though I didn't know my age at the time. And while I'd heard of Hitler, little bits and pieces and swear words that floated from the lane to my third-floor window, I wasn't the least concerned about him or any other war fought between nations. You'd think from what I've already told you that I was at war with my mother, but my first war, the one I waged that June, was between my brother and me. Jamie had a mop of dirt brown hair, the eyes of an angel and the soul of an imp. Ma'am said he was 6 years old and would have to start school in the fall. Unlike me, he had strong legs and 2 sound feet on the ends of them. He used them to run away from me. I dreaded being alone. Our flat was one room on the 3rd floor above the pub where Ma'am worked nights. In the mornings, Ma'am slept late, and it was my job to get Jamie something to eat and keep him quiet until she was ready to wake up. Then Ma'am usually went out to shop or to talk to women in the lane. Sometimes she took Jamie with her, but mostly not. In the evenings, Ma'am went to work, and I fed Jamie tea and sang to him and put him to sleep. And I'd been doing all that for as long as I could remember, from the days when Jamie still wore diapers and was too small to use the pot. We played games and sang songs and watched the world out the window. The Iceman and his cart, the Rag and Bone Man and his shaggy pony, the men coming home from the docks in the evenings, and the women hanging out wash and talking on the stoops, the children of the lane skipping rope and playing tag. I could have gotten down the stairs even then. I could have crawled or scooted on my bottom. I wasn't helpless. But the one time I did venture outdoors, Ma'am found out and beat me until my shoulders bled. You're no but a disgrace, she screamed. A monster with that ugly foot. You think I want the world seeing my shame? She threatened to board over my window if I went downstairs again. That was always her threat to me.